This video is going to go through the literary terms simile and metaphor. Both of these are used to make comparisons to something that's very different from the original object, so that's why I have this cartoon down here. It's like comparing apples and oranges. So there are two things that are very different from each other, but they're being compared to make a point. So let's look at simile first. So simile is a comparison between two unlike things that have something in common. A simile uses words like or as to make a comparison. There are other options as well. Some people just focus in on these two options, like or as. Technically, you could say something is similar to something else, and that would be a simile, or you could say you're doing something as if, and then continue on from there, and that could be a simile. But most times you'll see similes using either the word like or the word as. So on the side, this cartoon says a simile is like a smile. This isn't actually a great comparison, but it is an example of a simile. So it's using the word like to compare a simile to a smile. Let's look at some other examples. So these are using the word as, and you'll notice that it shows up twice when you're using the word as. So as quick as lightning, as slippery as an eel, as solid as a rock. And they're not too complicated. Here, lightning is just pointing out how quick this is. The others are really doing the exact same thing. Okay, it's not that complicated to figure out how a rock is solid. Down below, you'll just see examples using the word like instead of the word as. You'll notice that only comes up once. Stubborn like a mule, sturdy like an oak tree, hungry like a bear. And again, these aren't too complicated. It's not hard to figure out how a bear would be hungry. If we go on, you'll see that the other term that we're going through is metaphor. It's very similar to the last one we went through, simile, but there are some important differences, so we'll go through those. So it says a metaphor is a figure of speech comparing two unlike things that have something in common. Okay, that's the exact same way that this began. However, it says the comparison is made without the use of comparison words like or as. So it won't use those words that we saw back here to make the comparison. It'll just, in this case, it could just call something lightning. Like that person is lightning when they move. That would be a metaphor. Okay, so let's, and you'll see my cartoon here says, calm down, Jenkins. It's simply a metaphor because they probably said there's an elephant in the room and this elephant got upset. But that's really just a small joke. Okay. So this shows you some examples of metaphors. So the forest was a dark, frightening battlefield. It's not saying it was like it. It's saying that it actually was a dark, frightening battlefield. Okay. You have a heart of stone. Okay. So again, it's not saying that your heart is like stone. It's saying that you have a heart of stone. So it's not using like or as to make that comparison. He has the bravery of a lion. Okay, once again, not using like or as, comparing this person's bravery to that of a lion. You are the sun in my sky. Okay, comparing this person, you, to the sun in the sky. You, again, it's comparing you to the light in my life. You are the light in my life. So a lot of times you'll see that something is something else. The forest was a dark, frightening battlefield. You are the sun in my sky. But sometimes you'll even just see some strange verbs being used. So it says, could you shed some light on this problem? And we can't actually shed light. So that's comparing what the person's doing, in this case, helping them understand the problem, to something else where you would shine light on something that you can't find. Okay, so sometimes it gets a little bit more complicated than the ones that just say you are something or this was something. Okay. So let's look at some examples. You'll notice that these all come from the story Holes. But anyway, let's look at these examples and decide whether a simile or a metaphor is used. One of them will be used for each of the questions. So it says, Stanley Yelnats was as nervous as a cat with a long tail in a room full of rocking chairs as he rode the bus to Camp Green Lake. He was as nervous as a cat. So it uses as twice, just like the examples we saw. So this would be a simile. Okay. Zero was a mole as he dug his 5-foot deep hole. Here, 0 was a mole. It's not saying he was like a mole. It's saying that he actually was a mole. So in this case, it's not using any of those comparison words. This is an example of a metaphor. Whoops, gave away the answer. X-ray was misnamed for he was really as blind as a bat. Again, you see the word as being used. He was as blind as a bat. So since it's using those comparison words as, this is an example of a simile. Squid was a wounded animal on the inside, even though he taunted Stanley about receiving letters from and writing to his mother. Here it's saying he was a wounded animal. Again, it's not like he was a wounded animal. He actually was one. So it's not using a comparison word. So we would consider this one a metaphor. Magnet's fingers were sticky jam as he stole Mr. Sir's sunflower seeds. Okay. Once again, it's saying his fingers were sticky jam, not like they had sticky jam on them or anything like that. He's saying that they were sticky jam. So this is a metaphor. Just a couple more. Caveman smelled like a skunk after days of not bathing. Okay, he smelled like a skunk. It's using that word like to make the comparison. So this would be a simile. Zigzag had a heart of stone when he would not apologize to Stanley after hitting him in the head with a shovel. Okay, we already looked at this example, saying that his heart is made of stone without using the word like or the word as. So this is an example of a metaphor. I think this is the last one coming in. Yep. The warden's nails were deadly weapons after she painted them with rattlesnake's venom. Don't know why I can't speak right now. But the author is saying that they were deadly weapons, not that they were like deadly weapons. So once again, we have an example of a metaphor. Okay. For your practice worksheet, you'll notice that it asks you what two things are being compared, so you have to be a little bit more careful with it. So like in this one, the warden's nails are being compared to deadly weapons, and this is a metaphor. Okay. In this one, his heart is being compared to stone. So those are the two things being compared. In this one, the smell of caveman, or possibly even just caveman would be fine for this, is being compared to a skunk. More specifically, a skunk after days of not bathing. So those are the two things being compared. So when it asks you what two items are being compared, that's what I mean, is what two parts of the sentence are being compared. Okay, if you have trouble with that, definitely let me know. But again, you're looking for just the comparison word like or the comparison word as to check whether it's a simile. If it doesn't use them, it is a metaphor. Okay, I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions, please let me know.